Pashtunistan is the geographic region inhabited by the indigenous Pashtun people of modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. Alternative names historically used for the region included Afghanistan and Pashtūnkhwā. Pashtunistan borders Punjab to the east, Persian and Turkic-speaking regions to the west and north, Kashmir to the northeast, and Balochistan to the south. For administrative division in 1893, Mortimer Durand drew the Durand Line, fixing the limits of the spheres of influence between King Abdur, Rahman Khan and British India. This porous line that runs through the center of the Pashtun region forms the modern border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Roughly, the Pashtun homeland stretches from areas south of the Amu River in Afghanistan to west of the Indus River in Pakistan, mainly consisting of southwestern, eastern and some northern districts of Afghanistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The federally administered tribal areas in northern Balochistan in Pakistan. Origin of term. The name used for the region during the Middle Ages and up until the 20th century was Afghanistan and Pakhtūnkhwā, which has been mentioned by Ahmad Shah Durrani in his famous couplet by 6th century Indian astronomer Varahamihira, 7th century Chinese pilgrim Hivan Siang, 14th century Moroccan scholar Ibn Battuta, Mughal emperor Babur, 16th century historian Firashta and many others. The men of Kabul and Khilj also went home, and whenever they were questioned about the Musalmans of the Kohistan and how matters stood there, they said, "Don't call it Kohistan, but Afghanistan, for there is nothing there but Afghans and disturbances." Thus it is clear that for this reason the people of the country call their home in their own language Afghanistan, and themselves Afghans. But it occurs to me that when under the rule of Mohammedan sovereigns, Musalmans first came to the city of Patna and dwelt there, the people of India called them Pathans, but God knows, the name Pashtunistan, or in the soft Pashtu dialect, Pashtunistan, evolved originally from the Indian word Pashtunistan. The very concept of Pashtunistan was taken from the old word Pakhtunkhwā. The British Indian leaders and some of the Kudai Khidmatgars started using the word Pashtunistan to refer to the region, and later on the word Pashtunistan became more popular. The native people, the native or indigenous people of Pashtunistan of the Pashtuns. They are the largest ethnic group in Afghanistan and the second largest in Pakistan. The Pashtuns are concentrated mainly in the south and east of Afghanistan but also exist in northern and western parts of the country as a minority group. In Pakistan they are concentrated in the west and northwest, inhabiting mainly Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the federally administered tribal areas, and northern Balochistan. In addition, communities of Pashtuns are found in other parts of Pakistan such as Sindh, Punjab, Balochistan and in the nation's capital, Islamabad. The main language spoken in the delineated Pashtunistan region is Pashto, followed by others such as Balochi, Hindko, Gojri, and Urdu. The Pashtuns practice Pashtunwali, the indigenous culture of the Pashtuns, and this pre-Islamic identity remains significant for many Pashtuns and is one of the factors that have kept the Pashtunistan issue alive. Although the Pashtuns are politically separated by the Durand Line between Pakistan and Afghanistan, many Pashtun tribes from the Fatah area and the adjacent regions of Afghanistan tend to ignore the border and cross back and forth with relative ease to attend weddings, family functions and take part in the joint tribal councils known as jigas. Though this was common before the War on Terror, but after several military operations conducted in Fatah, This cross-border movement is checked via military and has become very less in comparison to the past. Depending on the source, the ethnic Pashtuns constitute 42 to 60% of the population of Afghanistan. In neighboring Pakistan they constitute 15.42% of the 190 million population, which includes the Hindkowans and Pathans. In the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of Pakistan, Pashto speakers constitute above 73% of the population as of 1998. History. Since the second millennium BC, the region now inhabited by the native Pashtun people had been conquered by ancient Iranian peoples, the Medes, Achaemenids, Greeks, Mauryas, Kushans, Hephtalites, Sassanids, Arab Muslims, Turks, Mughals, and others. In recent age, people of the Western world have nominally explored the area. Arab Muslims arrived in the 7th century and began introducing Islam to the native Pashtun people. Some of the Arabs settled in the Suleiman Mountains and slowly became Pashtunized over time. The Pashtunistan area later fell to the Turkish Ghaznavids, whose main capital was at Ghazni, with Lahore serving as the second powerhouse. The Ghaznavid Empire was then taken over by the Ghurids from today's Ghor Afghanistan. The army of Genghis Khan arrived in the 13th century and began destroying Persian-speaking cities in the north, while the Pashtun territory was defended by the Khilji dynasty of Delhi. In the 14th and 15th century, the Timurid dynasty was in control of the nearby cities and towns, until Babur captured Kabul in 1504. Delhi Sultanate and the last Afghan empire. During the Delhi Sultanate era, the region was ruled by Turkic dynasties from Delhi, India. An early Pashtun nationalist was the warrior poet Khushal Khan Khattak, who was imprisoned by the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb for trying to incite the Pashtuns to rebel against the rule of the Mughals. However, despite sharing a common language and believing in a common ancestry, the Pashtuns first achieved unity in the 18th century after being under foreign rule for many centuries. The eastern parts of Pashtunistan was ruled by the Mughal Empire, while the western parts were ruled by the Persian Safavids as their easternmost provinces. During the early 18th century, Pashtun tribes led by Mirwais Hotak successfully revolted against the Safavids in the city of Kandahar. In a chain of events, he declared Kandahar and other parts of what is now southern Afghanistan independent. By 1738 the Mughal Empire had been crushingly defeated and the capital sacked and looted by forces of a new Iranian ruler, the military genius and commander Nader Shah. Besides Persian, Turkmen and Caucasian forces, Nader was also accompanied by the young Ahmad Shah Durrani and 4,000 well-trained Pashtun troops from what is now Afghanistan and northwest Pakistan. After the death of Nader Shah in 1747 and the disintegration of his massive empire, Ahmad Shah Durrani created his own large and powerful Durrani Empire, which included Pashtunistan and most of nowadays Pakistan, among other regions. The famous couplet by Ahmad Shah Durrani describes the association the people have with the regional city of Kandahar. Dardili takt haram asherayad kamzamadar kul Pakhtunkhwa darji hre saruna. Translation: I forget the throne of Delhi when I recall the mountain peaks of my beautiful Pakhtunkhwa. The last Afghan empire was established in 1747 and united all the different Pashtun tribes as well as many other ethnic groups. Parts of the Pashtunistan region around Peshawar was invaded by Ranjit Singh and his Sikh army in the early part of the 19th century, but a few years later they were defeated by the British Raj, the new powerful empire which reached the Pashtunistan region from the east. European influence following the decline of the Durrani dynasty and the establishment of the new Barakzai dynasty in Afghanistan. The Pashtun domains began to shrink as they lost control over other parts of South Asia to the British, such as the Punjab region and the Balochistan region. The Anglo-Afghan Wars were fought as part of the overall imperialistic great game that was waged between the Russian Empire and the British. Poor and landlocked, newly born Afghanistan was able to defend its territory and keep both sides at bay by using them against each other. In 1893, as part of a way for fixing the limit of the respective spheres of influence, the Durand Line agreement was signed between Afghan Iron Emir Abdur Rahman and British Viceroy Mortimer Durand. In 1905, the Northwest Frontier Province was created and roughly corresponded to Pashtun majority regions within the British domain. The Fata area was created to further placate the Pashtun tribesmen who never fully accepted British rule and were prone to rebellions, while the city of Peshawar was directly administered as part of a British protectorate state with full integration into the federal rule of law, with the establishment of civic communities and the construction of railway, road infrastructure as well as educational institutes to bring the region at par with the developed world. During World War I, the Afghan government was contacted by the Ottoman Turkey and Germany, through the Etymology mission, to join the Central Allies on behalf of the Caliph in a jihad. Some revolutionaries, tribals, and Afghan leaders including a brother of the emir named Nasrullah Khan were in favor of the delegation and wanted the emir to declare jihad. Kazim Bey carried a firman from the Khalifa in Persian. It was addressed to the residents of Pashtunistan. Quote, "It said that when the British were defeated, His Majesty the Khalifa, in agreement with Allied states, will acquire guarantee for independence of the United State of Pashtunistan and will provide every kind of assistance to it. Thereafter, I will not allow any interference in the country of Pashtunistan." However, the efforts failed and the Afghan Emir Habibullah Khan maintained Afghanistan's neutrality throughout World War I. Similarly, during the 1942 Cripps mission and 1946 Cabinet mission to India, the Afghan government made repeated attempts to ensure that any debate about the independence of India must include Afghanistan's role in the future of the NWFP. The British government wavered between reassuring the Afghan to the rejection of the role and insistence that NWFP was an integral part of British India. The Khudai Khidmat were a non-violent group, and Ghaffar Khan claimed to have been inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, while the Red Shirts were willing to work with the Indian National Congress from a political point of view. The Pashtuns as a people desired independence from India. When the decision for independence was announced, it included the condition of a referendum being held in the Northwest Frontier Province because it was ruled by the Khudai Khidmat-backed Congress government of Dr. Khan Sahib. The inhabitants of the province were given two choices, the choice to join either Pakistan or India. On the 21st of June 1947, Khudai Khidmat leaders met under the presidency of Emir Muhammad Khan at Bannu and believed that a referendum was inevitable and that the participants would declare that Pakhtuns did not accept India or Pakistan and announced a boycott of the referendum. When the vote was completed, the vast majority of the residents of province voted in favor of Pakistan and the region was subsequently incorporated into the new country with full civic communities and rights. Independence of Pakistan in 1947. Since the late 1940s, with the dissolution of British India and independence of Pakistan, some rigid Pashtun nationalists proposed merging with Afghanistan, creating Pashtunistan as a future sovereign state for the local Pashtun inhabitants of the area. At first, Afghanistan became the only government to oppose the entry of Pakistan into the United Nations in 1947, although it was reversed a few months later, on July 26, 1949, when Afghanistan-Pakistan relations were rapidly deteriorating. A lawyer jigger was held in Afghanistan after a military aircraft from the Pakistan Air Force bombed a village on the Afghan side of the Durand Line. As a result of this violation, the Afghan government declared that it recognized neither the imaginary Durand nor any similar line, and that all previous Durand Line agreements were void. During the 1950s to the late 1960s, Pashtuns were promoted to high positions within the Pakistani government and military, thereby integrating Pashtuns into the Pakistani state and severely weakening secessionist sentiments to the point that by the mid-1960s, popular support for an independent Pashtunistan had all but disappeared. An important development in Pakistan during the Ayub period was the gradual integration into Pakistani society and the military bureaucratic establishment. It was a period of Pakistan's political history which saw a large number of ethnic Pashtuns holding high positions in the military and the bureaucracy. Ayub himself was a non-Pashto-speaking ethnic Pashtun belonging to the Taran subtribe of the Hazara district in the frontier. The growing participation of Pashtuns in the Pakistani government resulted in the erosion of the support for the Pashtunistan movement in the province. By the end of the 1960s, Afghanistan and Pashtun nationalists did not exploit Pakistan's vulnerability during the nation's 1965 and 1971 wars with India, and even backed Pakistan against a largely Hindu India. Further, had Pakistan been destabilized by India, nationalists would have had to fight against a much bigger country than Pakistan for their independence. In the 1970s, the roles of Pakistan and Afghanistan reversed. Despite the fresh crackdown on Baloch and Pashtun nationalists by the government of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the Pakistan government decided to retaliate against the Afghan government's Pashtunistan policy by supporting Islamist opponents of the Afghan government, including future Mujahideen leaders Gulbuddin Hekmatyar and Ahmad Shah Massoud. This operation was remarkably successful, and by 1977 the Afghan government of Muhammad Daud Khan was willing to settle all outstanding issues in exchange for a lifting of the ban on the National Awami Party and a commitment towards provincial autonomy for Pashtuns, which was already guaranteed by Pakistan's constitution, but stripped by the Bhutto government when the one-unit scheme was introduced. 21st century. The Pashtunistan issue is rarely mentioned anymore as a point of disagreement between Afghan and Pakistan officials, a far cry from the 1950s and 1960s when the issue was considered contentious. There are several arguments from the governments of Afghanistan and Pakistan regarding the Pashtunistan issue. These arguments sometimes overlap but can be distinctively defined. The British influence in the region of Afghanistan and Pakistan was most prominent during the late 19th century and early portion of the 20th century, when the British sought to re-establish efforts at colonization during Britain's imperial century. This British experiment was known as the Great Game, and was a subversive attempt at establishing Afghanistan as a buffer zone between British India and the Tsardom of Russia, by seeking to accord certain terrain international legitimacy based upon British failures to assert control over the fiercely independent Pashtuns and tribes in the region. The establishment of a border that would separate British interests from tribal interests was extremely important to British foreign policy. The British demarcation established as a result by the Durand Line was a deliberate strategy designed to divide the Pashtun territory along the border region of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The overall effect of the division was to alienate the Pashtun tribes from the neighbors as part of the British divide-and-conquer strategy, or divide-and-rule. This strategy had the ultimate effect of fostering anti-colonialist sentiment in the tribal regions, and Pashtuns as a result had a deep desire for independence and freedom from British rule. Pashtuns in Pakistan make up a minority ethnic group with about 15% of the population, totaling 29 million. This number also includes the Hindkowans and Pathans. In addition, there are 1.7 million Afghan refugees, of whom majority are Pashtuns. These refugees, however, are expected to leave Pakistan and settle in Afghanistan in the coming years. 3 Pakistani presidents belonged to the Pashtun ethnic group. Pashtuns continue to occupy some important places in the military and politics, with the major political party Awami National Party led by Asfandiar Wali. In addition to this, some Pashtun media, music and cultural activities are based out of Pakistan, with AVT Khyber being the only Pashtu TV channel in Pakistan. Pashtu cinema is based out of the Pakistani city of Peshawar. The Pakistani city of Karachi is believed to host the largest concentration of Pashtuns. There are more than 12 million Pashtuns in Afghanistan, constituting 42% of the population. Other sources say that up to 60% of Afghanistan's population is made up of ethnic Pashtuns, forming the largest ethnic group in the country. Pashto is the first official language of Afghanistan. The Afghan national anthem is recited in Pashto language, and the Pashtun dress is the national dress of Afghanistan. Since the late 19th century, the traditional Pashtunistan region has gradually expanded to the Amu River in the north. Majority of the key government positions in Afghanistan have always been held by Pashtuns. In addition, many of the non-Pashtun groups in Afghanistan have adopted the Pashtun culture and use Pashto as a second language. For example, nearly all leaders of non-Pashtun ethnic groups in Afghanistan practice Pashtunkhwā to some degree and are fluent in Pashto language. This includes non-Pashtun leaders such as Ahmad Shah Massoud, Ahmad Zia Massoud, Ismail Khan, Muhammad Fahim, Bismillah Khan Mohammadi, Atta Muhammad Anwar, Abdul Ali Mazari, Karim Khalili, Husn Banu Ghazan Fa, Muhammad Yunus Nwandash, Abdul Karim Brahui, Jamaluddin Badr, as well as most other ministers, governors and officials. Afghanistan makes its claim on the Pashtun areas on the ground that it served as the Pashtun seat of power since 1709, with the rise of the Hotaki dynasty followed by the establishment of the Durrani Afghan Empire. According to historic sources, Afghan tribes did not appear in Peshawar Valley until after 800 AD, when the Islamic conquest of this area took place. Agreements cited by the Afghan government as proof of the claim over the Pashtun tribes include Article 11 of the Anglo-Afghan Treaty of 1921, which states, "The two contracting parties, being mutually satisfied themselves each regarding the goodwill of the other and especially regarding the benevolent intentions towards the tribes residing close to the respective boundaries, hereby undertake to inform each other of any future military operations which may appear necessary for the maintenance of order among the frontier tribes residing within the respective spheres before the commencement of such operations." A supplementary letter to the Anglo-Afghan Treaty of 1921 reads, "As the conditions of the frontier tribes of the two governments are of interest to the government of Afghanistan, I inform you that the British government entertains feelings of goodwill towards all the frontier tribes and has every intention of treating them generously, provided they abstain from outrages against the people of India. The Durand Line and Pashtunistan issues have been raised by different Afghan regimes in the past. However, it may no longer be a concern. Pashtuns are now so well integrated in Pakistani society that the majority will never opt for Pashtunistan or Afghanistan. Afghan Pashtun refugees have been staying in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa for more than 30 years. Threat perceptions about Afghanistan need re-evaluation so that suitable changes are made in our Afghan policy. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Prominent 20th century proponents of the Pashtunistan cause have included Khan Abdul Wali Khan and Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Ghaffar Khan stated in the Pakistan Constituent Assembly in 1948 that he simply wanted the renaming of his province as Pashtunistan, like Sindh, Punjab, etc. Another name mentioned is Afghānistān, where the initial A in Chaudhry Rahmat Ali Khan's theory stated in the Now or Never pamphlet stands for the second letter in Pakistan. However, this name has failed to capture political support in the province. There was support, however, to rename Northwest Frontier Province as Pakhtunkhwa. Naseem Wali Khan declared in an interview, "I want an identity. I want the name to change so that Pathans may be identified on the map of Pakistan." On the 31st of March 2010, Pakistan's Constitutional Reform Committee agreed that the province be named to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. This is now the official name for the former NWFP. Gallery. Images of the Pashtunistan region.